All right, welcome back to Beneath the Helmet, everyone. This is our final episode of season 2, before we jump into season 3 starting in a few weeks here. So I just wanted to come on here and say thank you for everyone who made 2024 an amazing year on the podcast. Lots of growth, lots of interaction. Really appreciate the support of Beneath the Helmet. We are reaching many, many ears around the world. So today I got a chance to sit down with the author of this book here, American Firehouse Cuisine. He's also a former FDNY firefighter. He's also the winner of America's Greatest Firehouse Chef. Today I got a chance to sit down with retired firefighter from FDNY, Joseph Bonanno. So in this conversation, we're going to talk about some really challenging things that happened in Joseph's life, in his personal life, as well as being in the fire service. A lot of challenges they had to face and overcome. I just want to caution the listener right now that there will be discussions around suicide, so just be aware of that. So sit back, relax, enjoy this final episode of season 2 with Joseph Bonanno, author, firehouse chef, nutritionist, and somebody who's very passionate about sharing his story to help others with PTSD and other traumas. So until next time in season 3, I'll see you there. Stay well.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is season 2, another great episode. Today I got a celebrity in FDNY, former firefighter, also a author and a chef that's won an America's Greatest Firehouse Chef Award, which is pretty cool. And for those who know me, I'm a bit of a foodie, so this is an awesome episode to join in on. But Joseph Bonanno is going to join us today, and he's going to share a little bit about who he is and his experience going through FDNY, but also his experience in nutrition, fitness, cooking in the firehouse, and also some struggles through mental health as well that he wants to share with us. So welcome to the show, Joseph.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much, Chief, for having me. My name is Joseph Bonanno. I did 21 years with the New York City Fire Department. I'm also a military veteran. I served in the United States Air Force. My father was a firefighter in the South Bronx in New York City for 34 years, as well as my brother Michael, who was in Ladder 7. So I started my career in Engine 319, which is the single house in Middle Village, Queens. Very small firehouse, 4-man manning, no officer, no chief in quarters. At the time, I was 25 or 26 years old, and that was a firehouse sort of like that firefighters had served in busier companies, kind of retired to. So I didn't like being assigned in a firehouse with, and I'll say it's funny now because I'm older, but at that time, I remember my friends asking me, how do you like your new firehouse? And I said, it's nice, but it's a smaller firehouse. It's not in a busy area. And I don't think there's a guy there under 35, which I thought was ancient. And I go, some of them are even in their 40s. And, I thought it was like ancient to me, which it is when you're 25 and you're working with people that are 50. It's like working with your father or something, and they were great firefighters and they did their time in busy areas. It's just that they, decided to spend the latter part of their career in a place that might be a little slower and take it a little easy. So I didn't really pick up on the cooking, although they had some phenomenal cooks in that Engine 319. And it's funny. My father was a firefighter for 34 years, and I swear to you, I never remember him talking about meals or how good the food was, or even that they ate. He actually kept it close to the vest. He really never spoke that much about it, maybe because he was so busy and he worked in the South Bronx and he saw a lot of stuff that he didn't want to share with his wife and children. But I distinctly remember him coming home from work and he just smelled like a fireplace. I mean, literally, he smelled like a fireplace. I'm like, oh my God, But when you're a kid, you really don't, it doesn't sink in until you're actually a fireman and say, wow, now I know why you smell like that. But he never really spoke about the meals and stuff. So I was a little naive or unprepared. So the first firehouse I went to, which was Engine 319, first night you're there, They're like, dinner, kid. I'm like, I didn't even know they have dinner. I thought, like any other job that I work, you bring your lunch or you go to the fast food place and grab a lunch. Nobody sits down and cooks a meal for you. So I was like, all right, yeah, of course, I want to be part of the crew. So I sat down and ate. Fantastic meal. And I'm like, wow, and it was a slower firehouse, I'm sure some of the firefighters listening can appreciate this. When you're brand new, you're sitting on the edge of the seat, your chair in the kitchen, waiting for the big one to come in. And this wasn't a place where the big one came in very, very often. So you really just like a charged battery sitting on the edge of the chair. It's like, okay, when is the big one coming? It didn't. And, we had a nice dinner. And then they go, do you want a bunk? And I'm like, bunk? What's, I didn't even have any clue of that. And they took me up to the bunk room and they go, here's your bunk. And then, then I go back to the kitchen. But for the firefighters that work there, it was a normal day. Now you got a new probationary fireman in there. So it's all new to me. And so for them, they're like, after dinner, 10 o'clock rolls around, 10:30, they're going up one by one. They go, and I'm sitting in the kitchen by myself. I'm like, what am I supposed to do now? I guess I'm supposed to go to bed, which is so unusual. And I went up, deadly quiet night. I remember waking up at like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. I could smell coffee downstairs. I go, that's it? Now I go home? Yeah. I'm like, oh my, wow. And now I know why my father was so pressed to get me to take the fire department testing and, take that as a job. But, one of the things about that firehouse, and firefighters around the country and your country too can appreciate this, and I probably didn't have it any place else but New York. Some of the firehouses, like the one I was in, was so slow, and some of them were so busy that back in the day, and any New York fireman listening will understand the word, they had what they call an interchange, where every third night they would give a break to the really busy guy because they were getting hammered every night. So they'd say, you interchange with engine 319. The one we interchanged with was engine 332 in East New York, which is equivalent to the South Bronx as far as being busy. And that was the now you're a fireman wake-up call, because I went from chicken cutlet Parmesan and a night's sleep to East New York. I mean, the minute we passed them on the road, they go to our firehouse and get a night's rest and a good meal. We go to engine 3. I mean, the second we press in service, engine 332, respond to a 1075 at this box. You got 3 and 2 and the chief, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, we just pressed, and out we went. And you go to screaming all hands. And then you're like, okay, engine 332, we're in service again. Engine 332, taking a car fire at this address. And then engine, I have some of the recordings. It's unbelievable. It's like, engine 332 stopped operating at this car fire. You got 3 and 2, no engine in coming in this week. Drop the hose, put the hose back on the rig, leave the car, just leave it burn. Yeah, leave it burning and go assist these other companies.
Wow.
And then, you come back, this is all night long. Our shift was 6 at night till 9 the following morning. So by the time we interchanged, we got there at 8 at night. They go, don't bring any food because you're not going to eat. I'm like, what? We're not going to have the chicken cutlet Parmesan and no, it's not like that. And then it wasn't like that. So we would so anyway, that was just to show you that we did some time in busy companies and what that was like. So how the cooking thing started, to be part of the team in the crowd, and I was always fit. I was in terrific condition back then. And still to this day, I still keep up my exercise and workout regimen. But at that time, I was like watching some of the firefighters were overweight. They're like in their 40s and 50s, and life catches up with you. And, and plus the way they were eating, I had a degree in nutrition and fitness from NYU. And I'm like, but again, as a new person, you're not going to like take some crusty senior Sergeant Rock, South Bronx fireman and say, you really shouldn't be eating that much butter with your mashed potatoes because you know what you're going to hear. So you kind of go, so what I did generally is say, I'd like to take a turn cooking tonight. So I would take my turn at the wheel, make a salad, try to make stuff, like if I was making mashed potatoes, maybe I would make roasted garlic and mix it in with the mashed potatoes. Rather than what they were doing was peeling 4 sticks of butter like a banana and throwing 4 sticks of butter in it and cream. which sure, it's delicious, but it's like a heart attack waiting to happen. And again, I'm not that strict about it because there's always room for dessert and fun in life. You got to live too, you know. But I would just jump in every once in a while and hopefully impress them with a meal and never say, oh, this is healthier. I use garlic, you know, and generally they adapted it. They said, oh, that's pretty good. So I never tried to say this is a healthy meal. Yours isn't. You know, I let them take their turn, but then gradually, little by little, you start to perfect your craft of cooking and you make stuff better and better. And then you take suggestions too. So that's kind of how I started my cooking. Again, I was just an average cook. The book thing, Betty Firefighters at work will be listening. They're probably throwing stuff at the screen right now saying, that son of a gun, he had a book published. I can't believe it. You know, because I really only cooked once in a while. Most of the time it was basically chicken and, you know, carbohydrate. The protein was the chicken. The carbohydrate was either mashed potatoes or rice, but healthy, you know, healthy portions, healthy stuff, you know. So what wound up happening is, to fast forward the story, in 1984, John Sonino, who was a New York City fireman, in 1984, he published a book called The Firefighters Cookbook. Now, John worked in 58 Engine in Manhattan, Harlem Hilton, they used to call it. He was an average cook. He never went to professional culinary training, but he had a good reputation as a cook. You know, he made mean rice pudding, was one of his favorites. And what happened is he published this, and it was only a paperback, no pictures, paperback book. And he only did, I think they printed 5,000 copies. It was only going to be a local thing. And he donated all the money to the Burn Center. Well, as fate would have it, and I love to tell this story because it's a success story. You remember Phil Donahue? He had the talk show. Phil Donahue. Yeah, he just passed away. Yeah, he just passed away, actually. His show was based in Chicago. And I guess whatever network he was working for was moving to New York. So he asked his producers, he goes, listen, I need an opening episode to warm up to the New York audience. You know, give me some ideas what we could do. And I think one of his producers said, hey, listen, you know, in New York, they love their firemen. Actually, all over the world, cities love their fire, but New York, they have a special affinity for their firefighters. And they all know that they cook. And he said, really? I didn't know that. He goes, yeah. And some guy in New York, this guy, John Sonino, just published the book. And he goes, why don't we have him on with a couple other firefighters, and we'll do a little cooking segment on my introduction to the New York audience. So he does that. Now, John was not a professional in front of a camera, and he was busy talking to him, and he was making chicken parmesan or something. And when he got to talking to Phil Donahue, and he forgot, and the pot started burning. The oil started burning with the chicken in it. And he's like, oh my God. So, you know, made for a funny segment. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, and he was a very likable individual too. And plus he had 4 other firemen with them on the stage. The audience, you know, in that day and age, they didn't have the word viral, but in that day and age, I don't know what the word was, but when that show went, if you want to call it viral, it went viral. I mean, they couldn't get enough of him. They couldn't get enough of they didn't know the cooking thing came out. And the book, within 2 weeks, was on the New York Times bestseller list. It went from a local 5,000 copies to New York Times bestseller list. And then once it gets on the bestseller list, it sells because it's on the bestseller list. So it sold even more. I think it sold like 300, 400,000 copies. It went nuts. And he was booked everywhere. I mean, so how that applies to me, in 1993, which was 9 years later, I was a decent firehouse cook, just average, decent firehouse cook, no professional training, but I had my degree in fitness and nutrition. So I took a course at the New School. The course was called How to Write a Cookbook and Get It Published. But Chief, believe me, I didn't go saying, you know, I'm focused, I got recipes ready, I'm going to publish a book. I just went, you know, it's a summer Saturday in Manhattan, nice day in the fall, take a fall, you know, course and keep the information. Take the class. The teacher we had said, first time he ever offered this class, How to Write a Cookbook and Get It Published. So he says, we're going to go around the room and say your idea for a cookbook. I'm like, say my idea. I didn't even have one. And what was funny is because it's New York and everybody was trying to get noticed, one by one, as they got to everybody, they were name dropping, you know, they're like, oh, hi, my name is John. I'm a professional chef. I trained in Sweden. I went to the Culinary Institute in Hyde Park. And I'm like, oh my God, look at the company. And then he said, I got 300 recipes. I want to do a Swedish cookbook, and next person, and everybody was qualified except me. Then they get to me and I'm like, all right, Joe, think quick. All right, let's see. There was a successful fireman cookbook. John, unfortunately, I don't know, due to his eating or genetic or whatever, he wound up having a triple bypass, which happens to a lot of firefighters. Was his nutrition part of it? Probably. I don't know. I don't want to judge him like that, but nutrition and I don't think he was a big exercise guy either. He was old school. Hey, I get enough exercise going to fires. So when they finally get to me, what I said is, I go, listen, a New York fireman published a book in '84. It was on a New York Times bestseller list. But unfortunately, due to his eating style and habits, and some firemen in general, could lead to heart attack, health problems. So I just got certified as a fitness trainer and a nutritionist. If I was going to do a cookbook, I would do a healthy cookbook, healthy firehouse cookbook. He goes, that's a pretty good idea. Next. And then he went around the room. He says, this afternoon, we have an editor from Hearst coming in. Our editor comes in. She was like the strictest nun you've ever seen in school, in Catholic school. She stood up there and she says, okay, this is what you need to have ready. If you're going to have a book, you have to have 10 recipes completely tested. You have to write the opening chapter. You have to this and that. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this. So she says, all right, we're going to open the floor for 5 minutes. I'm going to give my dissertation. 5 minutes, just throw your ideas out there. I'll let you know what I think. And it was almost like, the American, what's that show where they somebody gets up and sings and they hit the gong, or they
American Idol or something like that.
Yeah, American Idol, like that. Yeah. So they were, people were raising their hand trying to get noticed. I mean, the Swedish guy said this, she goes, listen, there's like 14 Swedish books. We don't need another Swedish book. Next. And she was shooting people down left and right. So I said, I'm not even going to mention my idea. So I'm like cowering in my seat. Class ends. Teacher says, listen, thank you very much for attending. It's the first time we're in a class and so successful. I wish everybody a lot of luck. Do not be shy if you have a really good idea. Like a fireman, for instance. And I'm like in this seat like this. And he goes, Joe, would you stand up and say your idea?
No way.
Oh my God. So I stand up, say, listen, I'm a New York City firefighter. I've been a firefighter for 15 years. I make healthy meals in the firehouse. I have a degree in fitness and nutrition. There was a successful book. I'd probably do a healthy firehouse cookbook. I mean, the editor lit up and she said, wow, that is a phenomenal idea. Are you ready to do it? And, that's the funny part is all the 75 people in the class are ready to kill me because they wanted to get noticed. And she noticed the only person that didn't want to get noticed. So she says, please stay after class. I want to talk to you. All right. So everybody got up and left. I went up to her desk. She said, here's my card. I'm the editor for Hearst Publishing in New York. Do you have an agent? I go, I have an agent. I go, no, I don't have an agent. How about an axe, a hose, a fire truck? But I don't have an agent. She goes, well, this is how it works. I'll get you an agent Monday. We have to work through an agent. And can you do this? So I says, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever she tells me to do. So I called her Monday. She says, go get 10 recipes, sample recipes, write the opening, the introduction. And so what I did is I put an ad in Firehouse magazine and asking for it because they didn't want to make it a New York fireman cookbook. They wanted national appeal. So I put an ad in Firehouse magazine. Any firefighters interested, you get a free copy of the book. Your name will be in the blah, blah, blah book. So I got about 80, kind of cut them down to about 70, 75. And I used about 15 to 25 of my own things that I used in the firehouse. Put it together, gave them a proposal, and they said, okay, it's a go. And next thing you know, and then like what happened to John Sonino, what happened to me is the minute it's published, it's like, Joe, you got a 13-city tour that you have to do. And I go, listen, I'm still working full time. Well, see what you can do over swapping your vacation. So I had to go on which I'm not complaining. It was a 13-city tour, which was crazy because having no experience in this field of entertainment, I'm like, oh, great. I'll be in Minneapolis. I'll go see a friend of mine. I'll be in San Diego. They're like, no, you're going to be 6 o'clock in the morning. You're going to be at the local firehouse cooking breakfast. Then you're going to go to another one, cook breakfast. Then we're going to take you to TVs when the TV shows start. Then we're dropping you on a plane and you go to the next city. So it was sort of like a rock star band thing, and you're like shot. I mean, I didn't even know what city I was in doing, and it was what an experience. Plus, they always had me hooked up with the local fire department, which was great. Every city, Cleveland, Washington, D.C., Philly. I didn't make it to Canada, but just 13 cities across the country, well, all big show, Regis, Good Morning America, Today Show. I mean, it was crazy after a while. I was still working full time.
Wow.
You know,
That's great.
yeah. So
So
the book, that was 95, the book came out, which is already
Yep.
starting to be on the Antiques Roadshow. Which is why, like you said, the book I just published because I wanted to be current was American Firehouse Cuisine. Well, the first was the Healthy Firehouse Cookbook, was 95. 98, that book really did well. And they wanted to do another one, so they did a grilling book, which was 98. I did a children's story book in 03, which I dedicated to my brother Michael. And then I did the 20-year anniversary of 9/11 was 21. I wanted to do a 20-year anniversary cookbook. I called it American Firehouse Cuisine because I worked with so many firefighters that weren't just cooks. They were like national caliber, international caliber celebrity. I mean, chefs that were that level of expertise. I think they deserve to be called cuisine, not just fires cooking. So I did that in 2021. And the other one was to be current. To relate a funny story about that, I did a cooking appearance here in Plant City. So the local Plant City Fire Department came. I'm in Florida, by the way. Local Plant City Fire Department visited, and one of the firemen came up to me with my first book from 95, and he goes, "Joe, would you sign this book for me? My mother gave this to me. I wanted to be a fireman since I was a little kid." And I go, "When did your mother give this to you?" He goes, "I was 9 years old." I go, "Get out of here. It can't be." But when I did the math, he was 25. It was that long ago. I said, "Oh my God." So that's why I said, time to do a new book.
beautiful. So going back in
But
time a little bit.
let me talk a little. I'm yakking too
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
No. This is your show. This is your show. I want to go
No,
back.
George.
I want to go back in time a little bit. Did you ever get a chance to work with your brother or your dad in the fire service?
My father, no.
Yep.
My brother once. It was actually a funny incident because he was his first assignment was engine 315 and 125, and which was not far from where I was in Queens. And they don't like to assign brothers and relatives in the same firehouse because, God forbid, somebody gets, in an incident, get killed. At least they're in a different fires. So, but he was reasonably close to me. And I do remember the only time I ever ran in with him was and I remember saying to him, "Don't ever, ever leave the rig without your mask." It's just because I've done it a few times thinking it's not something and it turns out to be something. And now you look like a fool trying to run back to the rig to get your mask. So you kind of I know it's not standard across the country, but in New York, like if you didn't need a mask, they weren't going to wear one. It's probably different now, but back then it was like leather lungs. Just, you don't need a mask. So I always said that to him. And then what do? We pull up to some roast or fire, and his company was at the door trying to take the door. We pulled up right behind them, truck company, and I didn't have my mask on, and he did. And I remember tapping him on the shoulder, and he said, "Oh, we got this door that they're taking. We had to go somewhere else." And he looked at me, and I saw him look at my back, and I go, "I know." So I was able at that time to go back to the ring and get my mask, but
Leading by example, eh?
yeah, well, I wasn't, but
Yes.
so, but yeah, that's the
Amazing.
only time I actually ever
Wow.
crossed paths on the job with my brother. But he also, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but he also came with me to the rescue and recovery at 9/11.
Were you still on the
We'll
job at
get
9/11?
No, he had a back injury in the Empire State Building fire, so he was retired, and he moved to Cleveland with his wife and daughter. But he was actually in New York visiting on 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And that's a whole nother crazy story. I mean, we can maybe even do a whole nother show about that. But basically, he almost came with me. He was like, "Oh, when are you going to be on TV again?" I said, "Actually, I'm going to be on a Sunday." He asked me. I said, "Tuesday morning, September 11th, I'm going to be on TV. They have a live TV show. I'm doing it from Ladder 3 in Manhattan. Do you want to go with me?" He goes, "I don't want to get up that early. I have to get up at 5 a.m. to get there." And thank God he didn't. But
Were you still on
we'll
the
save
job?
that story.
Were you still on the
No,
job?
I was no. I had just put my retirement papers in.
Gotcha.
But then when that's a whole nother story. It's on my website. If anybody wants to read it about what happened to me on 9/11. And I was actually with Captain Patrick Brown.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure you've heard that name. Yeah, I was with Captain Patty Brown. And I was in Ladder 3 that morning. I wasn't there to work. I was there to do this cooking segment for Ronzoni Pasta was sponsoring the fireman cooking contest. And they wanted me to judge it and promote it on TV. So they asked me to promote it on TV. We were supposed to do it on, like I said, it's a pretty long story. And your viewers can listen to it read it on my website, but I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. Basically, they asked me to promote this cooking contest and judge it. And a local WB11 in New York wanted to do it on September 8th. They called me in the sun, like in August. We're booked for September 8th at ladder 152. That was my last assignment. And I said, okay, no problem. About a week before, they called up and said, the crew doesn't really want to go from Manhattan all the way out to Queens because of the traffic. And we don't get good reception because it's a live show. We're going to do it in Manhattan. So I said, okay. And they said, where? They says, well, how would you feel about doing it at ladder 3 in Lower Manhattan? I said, okay. And they said, the only thing is we can't do it on the 8th. Are you available September 11th? Yep. Who would ever have thought that changing that day? So I said, yeah, I'm okay. I'm around on the 11th. Yeah, if you want to. All right, we'll send the car service for you at 5 o'clock in the morning. They'll pick you up, bring you into ladder 3. Now, my brother worked at ladder 7, which is right down the street from ladder 3. He knew a bunch of guys in ladder 3. I knew 2 or 3 guys in ladder 3. So I'm like, yeah, of course. And showed up that morning at like 6:30 in the morning. The host of this show was there. So how it was working is, well, the whole show wasn't there. Like, in other words, they're in the studio and they're down Manhattan. They'll say, all right, we're going to cut live to Larry Huff and Joe Bonanno at ladder 3. They're cooking up a storm. And then they do like a 5-minute segment of us kidding around and sliding down the pole, getting on the rig and blah, blah, blah. And then they cut back to the studio. Then we're break. Then they said, okay, at 7:45, we're going to do another one. So 7:45, they cut to us. The last one was about 8:30. We did the last segment. The first plane hit at 8:46. So we finished the segment and they're like, where are you going with all that food? Bring it in the kitchen. And we'll sit down to eat. So then, I remember it like it was yesterday. Captain Patrick Brown, he wasn't working the night before. He comes in that morning. It's the first time I ever met him. He said, hey, Captain Brown, pleasure to meet you, an honor to meet you. And he goes, oh, who are you? Are you with the, video unit or something? I go, no, I'm a firefighter. I just retired. I'm doing this cooking segment here. And just a real brief conversation. The other firemen were great. They were like, I remember there was a probationary fireman there. And I went after we finished cooking, I went in the kitchen to do the dishes. And he's probie, he just got there. He was only there like a couple of months. And he says, oh, our guests don't do the dishes here. And I said, I'm not a guest. I'm a fireman just like you. So I didn't want to argue with him. So I said, listen, all right, you want to do the dishes? You do the dishes. I'll dry or whatever. So I tried. So I was talking to him and he was saying, I am so psyched that I got this firehouse with Captain Brown. I just got out of training academy. He got killed. And so did the other 12 firefighters that were there doing the segment with me. I went back out to the apron on the front. We were all sitting in front of the quarters because it's Tuesday morning in Manhattan, beautiful weather, beautiful girls walking by, checking the girls out and talking to the firemen. And the girl that worked for Ronzoni, she says, Joe, the car service guy's not going to be here. He's in the Bronx. He's not going to be here for an hour. That would have cost me my life because I would no doubt in my mind I would have responded with. But what happened was not even 30 seconds later, she gets a call and she says, Joe, I got good news. There's another car service guy right around the corner. They can come and get you right now if you want. You could go home. And all the firemen, no, come on, it's great. The weather's beautiful. You're going to be sitting in traffic for 2 hours. Just hang, come and hang out with us. And I so wanted to. And I just, I said, you know what? I don't want to hold the guy up. And so, I'm just going to take off, fellas. And so I said, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It was great doing this. Have a safe tour. I got in the car service guy starts driving me. And now I'm starting to hear sirens, which that's not unusual in Manhattan. But now I'm hearing a lot. I'm like, oh my God, what the heck's going on? I put the radio on and then I hear it just happened. I mean, the plane must have flew over our car because I hear on the radio, apparently a small plane has hit the World Trade Center. And I mean, I literally, between the buildings, as we're driving up 6th Avenue, I could see it. And I'm like, small plane. The thing is, then I hear a lady on the radio saying, oh, we have a woman on the radio. Ma'am, can you describe what you see? And she says, yeah, I didn't see the plane hit. I don't know what size plane it was, but there's at least 4 to 5 stories and a diagonal swath across that where a plane went. And I go, 5 stories? That's not a little Cessna. This is something. But you still thought it was an accident. And I said, how could it be an accident? It's a beautiful day. And then I'm hearing now fire trucks going like crazy, going to Queens Midtown Tunnel, no radio reception when I come out, go through the toll, and I look to my right, and now I see smoke pouring out of the one tower, and I see the second tower get hit. And now the radio saying, apparently this isn't an accident. This was an intentional blah, blah. And, now you're hearing it. So now I told the driver to turn the car around. So he turned around and went to the thing, and they go, nobody's going through the tunnel. Tunnels are closed. Doesn't matter. I got my badge out, my ID. I'm like, no, I got to get back. And he goes, no, nobody, please. Nobody's going, EMS, nobody's going through the tunnels. So I had no other choice, but I went home. But by the time I got home, the first tower was collapsing. And I remember saying to myself, I'm watching thousands and thousands of people right before my eyes and hundreds of firemen and police getting killed right before my eyes. Like the world saw it. I'm sure you did too. The horror that you're feeling watching that come down, knowing and it's not going to be 3 people killed. It's going to be, and the grief that's going to come from that. It just was so, as you know, and anybody that's listening to this podcast, wherever you were in the world, the grief that came from watching that horrible event. So anyway, I get back out to Long Island. My brother was there. And, I said to him, I says, Michael, I can't watch this on TV. I got to go in there. And he said, do you have any extra gear? And I said, yeah. And so gave him a coat, turnout coat, boots, helmet. And we jumped on the train and went back into Manhattan. We actually found the rig, ladder 3. We were one of the first ones to find the rig. He goes, Joey, isn't that ladder 3? And I go, yeah, oh my God. The first third of it was completely crushed. And that's the rig that's actually in the World Trade Center Museum.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that's in the lobby that you see the whole front by the aerial ladders all caved in. Mm. I was sitting in that rig that morning with these firefighters. So that's actually, and they actually, if you ever go to the World Trade Center Museum, you'll hear them saying the morning of September 11th, they were doing the cooking show thing and they responded and, so yes. And anybody that's listening, Captain Patrick Brown, he was on the 44th floor, I think. And he got orders to leave the building. And he's, he declined the order. He says, I'm not obeying the order. I'm saying we got 50, 60 severely burned people here. I'm not leaving. And the next transmission was, I think the building's coming down. That was it. So anyway, I made a tape of that and delivered it to all the families, the tape of the morning, because it got to see all of their,
oh, wow. Oh, nice.
The last minutes of them alive, having their last meal basically and enjoying it. But, yeah. And then plus working down there and seeing everything store. I mean, it was just working, retired, and as the days went by, initially you would see firemen from upstate New York, Connecticut, Jersey. As the weeks went by, it was like Idaho, California, Poland. I saw firemen from Poland. The outpouring of support was just, it didn't eliminate the event, of course, but it really softened the blow to think that the whole country, the whole world, the whole world came together.
Yeah. Yeah. I went down, I think it was a month later, almost to the date. And when we arrived in New York, essentially all the firehouses were saying, all you can do really is go to some funerals for us because we're burnt out. We're fried. We just need people to represent the fire service at these services. So I think we went to like 8 services by the time we were down there and just to back to back. And what an incredible experience to witness, for sure. I felt like I wanted to do more, but looking back on it, I also know that that was a very important task at that point in time, right? So, as well as everything else going on.
Oh yeah, the outpouring of support from the fire community, but also the local community, bringing us food. Uh, Home Depot pulled up a tractor trailer with tools. Said, take whatever you want. We got sawzalls, we got regular saw, whatever you take, whatever tools you need. So businesses, personal, firefighters, fire community, it tempered the grief a little, a certain amount. I mean, it was, and then of course there's the other side of it. You said going to all these funerals, seeing these wives and children and it just, but I don't want to make this such a down interview, but it's part of it for sure.
Yeah. It's a huge part of the fire service history and I guess you could say culture in one way of that one fateful day, right? That changed a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I did a thing at my nephew Nicholas's school, and one of the kids asked me, what was the best and worst day in your career? And I said, both the best and worst day was September 11th. It was the worst day because of everything that happened and the grief and the loss and everything else. But I also very proud that I was actually there. I felt so bad for some of my friends that were retired and moved to different parts of the country. They so wanted to be there like you did. And every firefighter around the world felt that pain. And when somebody's in pain, somebody that you care about, you want to alleviate the pain. So that's why you and other people that wanted to come there, they wanted to share the grief, share the work, maybe save some. And that, when I think about it, that was one of the most horrible things about it is that this is the career that we chose, and the career we chose is to save lives. But unfortunately, that event, there wasn't anybody to save. If you were in the collapse zone, you were gone. I mean, I saw these medical units, like MASH unit type things, set up to help all the wounded and hurt. Even the cadaver dogs were getting depressed because there wasn't anybody to save, and if we could have saved a cat, I would have felt better. But inside that collapse zone, there wasn't anybody to save. And all you could do was give solace to the fellow firefighters and which is fine, but yeah, that's my 9/11. That's my 9/11 story. If anybody wants to read it, it's on my website.
Thanks for sharing that, because it's probably not an easy thing to relive over and over again. And it's incredible to think that 23 years ago this happened. It feels like yesterday. And I'm a Canadian, far, far away from New York City, but it felt like yesterday. So, any other little nuggets on the cooking? Anything that you want to share there before we dive into the last segment?
Yeah, I get a lot of a few of the podcasts I did. They want to say, like, what advice would you give to younger firefighters preparing meals for the firefighters they work with and stuff like that? But I always say, like, first of all, question the people that you work with. Not everybody likes chicken, not everybody likes fish, not everybody likes. Find out what they like. Don't make something your first foray into cooking. Don't make some kind of weird thing that is going to have this violent reaction from people you work with. That's one. Make plenty of it if it's good. Don't leave out dessert. Like John Sonino makes a mean rice pudding. I have a bread pudding recipe to die for in my American Firehouse Cuisine book. So always make some kind of a dessert. And, two things I would impress upon the younger firefighters, being an older firefighter and retired now. Two things. Number one, take a lot of pictures. Guys you work with, the rig, work that you do, coffee, whatever you do, take tons of pictures. Because someday you're going to be retired in a recliner and lamenting of your career, and you're going to want to look at pictures of or show other people. So I did take some, but we didn't have cell phones at the time. So we didn't take as many. So if you have snap pictures of guys sleeping on the couch, snap pictures of the guys working out, just take a ton of pictures. And the other thing is, which us as human beings tend to take things for granted, is these 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years that you're going to spend in this fire service, it's going to be a huge part of your life. Don't discount even when you start. Every once in a while, I get choked up when I talk about it because I talk to so many older retired guys that miss it so much. When you sit, I go, every once, and I did too. Every once in a while when I was working, yeah, you get on the rig, you're busy, but every once in a while I would actually sit back in the rig and I go, this is the coolest MF job anybody could have had. People, oh yeah, people cheering you as you drive by, the whole, leaving the firehouse, the rig, getting the cars out of the way. Every once in a while, take a step back and embrace it. Because, how could I put this?
Flies by.
Well, Kenny Chesney sings a great song. Excuse me, Chief, I get a little choked up. He sings a great song called Don't Blink.
Yes.
Have your people listen to it.
Good song.
And there's an old guy he interviews at the beginning. And the old guy was like close to 100. And the guy said, that's what he said, don't blink. 100 years goes faster than you think. So that's 100 years. This guy was close to 100. 20 years in a career, 30 years in a career. It doesn't seem like it when you're working. It's when you're retired, you're like, wow. And why didn't I embrace it while I was there? And not only, and this is a word on the, not only embrace it, the how could I put this deftly? The ball busting mentality. It's fun. I understand it. Hazing, all of that. But you know what? Why don't you temper that a little bit with a compliment once in a while? Or something nice about another firefighter. But, instead of like all of this, who's the funniest, who can make fun of the person with the biggest nose, the biggest ears, the bald head, the overweight. I get it. And I wrote an article actually years ago, and it was called Good Natured Kidding. And that's how you sometimes you get past terrible things is you have a little bit of kidding. But, keep it good natured. This guy has a big nose. Listen, he knows he has a big nose. He's had it all his life. He probably had to put up with it in high school. Why do you have to and I use the word terrorize because they go. I'm sure you've witnessed it in Canada too. Make it a career out of making this guy's life miserable. Which once in a while, yes, there's room for it, levity. But think before you act. You know what I mean? That's what I say. Because someday you'll be retired and you'll be looking at pictures and you say, wow, that guy, I used to work with that. One day you look at what's good about him, not what's bad about him. He has a big nose, but he was a great fireman. He could take a door like nobody's business.
That nose really matters.
What?
Does that nose really matter?
No, but
the big
I'm sure you understand it. And a little, I call it good natured kidding. Think before you act. I had a really terrible practical joke played on me before I left the fire department. Left a really bad taste in my mouth. Captain did it. And, and I said to him, listen, what, you want to get in a fist fight over it? I go, why did you go out of your way to really, I was out on medical leave a little longer than I probably should have. And, he had a fake doctor call me up and say, you're in all kinds of trouble. And I said to him, I go, listen, I know you were trying to be funny, but it's not so funny, and you let me go the whole weekend. It's like at the end of the joke, you said, hey, Joe, it's me. I had a friend of mine who's a doctor call you up. He waited the whole weekend. And I said to him, he talked about mental health in the fire department. What's one of the worst things that can happen to a firefighter where, it could cost him his life if he's that embarrassed about let's say he fumbled when he was trying to open a door, or he was hitting the thing and he couldn't get it open. And then they decide to make a mockery of him week after week after week. Listen, that guy, you don't know his mental status. He might be so embarrassed about his performance that he takes his life. And that's what I said to that captain. I says, you're lucky I'm not of that personality. I go, if I was that, if I thought I was going to lose my job because of a knee injury that was misdiagnosed, what if I said I'm going to lose my job, my pension, the book, everything's out the window, I'm taking my life? How would you feel about that? So I said, well, I wasn't, I go, exactly, you weren't thinking. So, apology accepted it.
Good for you
And
for
you move
standing
on.
up for yourself.
Yeah, but, so
So
I'll let you lead now. I don't want to keep, I'm yakking away here.
like I said, it's your podcast. I am the host, but you're the guest.
Okay.
You're the
Okay.
voice of the episode.
Well, we led from cooking and the fire
Oh yeah,
department, and
yeah.
now we led into the PTSD thing. And again, if people go to my website, you could see my brother Michael's story. He was in Ladder 7. He in 2012, the summer of 2012, I don't know what went on with him. He was having some marital stuff, but nothing out of the ordinary. Had some personal issues with my father and family stuff, but nothing that I thought was leading to him taking his life. And if you go to my website, or people who are listening, go to my website, look at his picture, ridiculously handsome, good fireman, great guy, great sense of humor, and anybody in any fire service in the world, when they take their life, everybody's like, oh, how could they? Why? The stuff that goes through your brain. It damn near killed me to lose him like that, especially we worked side by side at Ground Zero, and he could have called me, and I see in some of the PTSD, either seminars or things that they do, they go, reach out, call somebody. Well, of course, you all understand that, and he had a phone with him when he did it, and he could have called me. But like I was telling you before about taking a class, do you think he's going to call me and say, Joey, I'm in Ohio, I'm walking up the Valley View Bridge and I'm going to jump? He's not going to call me and tell me that. He had his, at that point, he's already made his mind up that that's what he's doing. And then they're not going to call. So how I try to, and I hope someday I get to give a PTSD class in this, because I've done tremendous amount of reading on it. And I'm willing to share this with you, Chief. Early in my career, my mother was killed in a fire.
Oh, wow.
She got 55% third-degree burns in a house fire at my home. I was working in Engine 319 at the time. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 55% third-degree burns. She lived for a week, and then she died right in front of me and my brother Michael. So he had that to deal with too. After that happened, believe me, Chief, I had moments where I thought, I'm never going to be happy again. What's the point of living if I'm never going to be happy again? How am I going to live with this on my plate? I'm a fireman and I lose my mother in a fire. How am I going to live with this on my plate? So thankfully I went to some help, but believe me, I was contemplating it, and how I try to, and when I give these, and I've done so much reading on it after my brother passed away, because I wanted to learn the whys and wherefores of why people. So how I kind of look at it for firemen, and if I ever give a class, that's what I'd say. I told you, if there's a class of 100 firemen taking a PTSD class, and I asked anybody in this room thinking of taking it, nobody's going to raise their hand. Because the guy next to him would say, what do you mean? You thinking of taking? You never told me that. So you kind of keep it a secret until you can't take it anymore, and then you act on it. That's the problem. So what I see, and if I ever gave a clinic, I would say, any firefighter in this room who's having personal problems, financial problems, work problems, raise your hand. Of course, everybody's going to say, raise their hand, say, yeah, I got some issues with my wife, my family, but anybody they're not going to say they're taking their life. But what I would say is, have you put this on your option list? Like, listen, I'm getting divorced, but it could work out. I could get divorced. Maybe I'll meet somebody else that's even better. My financial situation could turn around. I could work a second job. There's always a solution. But what starts happening is they go, all right, I'm having marital problems, I'm having financial problems and work problems. Things are starting to pile up on me. I'm not the type to take my life. But if things don't turn around, this is option 20. It's not option 1. It's option 20. And then other stuff starts happening. They actually do get divorced. In court, they lose their house to the wife. Now they're like, I'm broke. And now, like, all of a sudden, option 20, things are just turning out to be crap. I just moved it up to option 10. And then what happens is, and that's not a magic number. Then the worst part is what happens is when it starts to get closer to it being an option, then they start thinking, how would I do it? Now you've implemented an option and you've also implemented the method to do it. That's when it starts to get dangerous. Because all of a sudden he comes home and his wife says, listen, I've been having an affair with your best friend. And the literal straw that broke the camel's back. So now he said, now it ain't even an option anymore. I'm having an affair with my best friend. I can't believe it. Now I lose my friend, my wife, my house, probably going to lose my job. I'm taking my life. And now it's go time. So I think all of those things piled up on him. And then it was I never knew that it was an option. And again, he, I want to relate it because it's just so horrible. And I want people to understand how terrible your mind, how could your mind get to such a terrible place? He dropped his daughter off at school. He walked to the Valley View Bridge, which is about 300 feet. He parked the car at the base of the bridge. He walked up the side walked 8 minutes with his phone in his hand, got to the highest point of the bridge, climbed over the fence, turned around, held a chain link fence. Some lady below saw the whole thing and he let go. And he fell onto hard ground from 300 feet. Now, under normal circumstances, if you're working in a tower ladder and you look down, you're like, oh my God, if I ever took a header from here, right? But he willingly, without hesitation, just like, a police officer that takes his life. If I, kidding around, took a gun and held it to a police officer's head, he'd rip my arm off, right? Don't even kid around like that. Yet they get to a point where they willingly load their gun up and put their gun to their head and do it. So my point is, firefighters that are listening, you have a friend that you're concerned about, ask him if it was an option. Listen, it was an option for me back when my mother died. And believe me, I already said, how would I do it? And I said to I said, you know what? I don't want people to think I killed myself. I'll just, listen, you have the perfect job to do it. I work in Manhattan, high-rise buildings. I get the roof and I take a header off the roof and I die a hero. Nobody knows I took my life. Right. And so in other words, I thought I had an option and now I had a plan. But I don't know. Listen, I was at work a few times walking towards the edge of the parapet and I looked over and I didn't get to that point yet. I couldn't do it. I remember looking down and saying, there's no way. There's no way. I feel like crap, but I can't do this. And not to anybody else. That's the crazy part. You would think like, well, wow, I really hurt my family, my brothers and my friends. And, no, I didn't think that. I thought, and again, that's what everybody goes through. Like, didn't my brother know that I'm going to get this phone call and I'm going to be grief stricken for years and all his friends that work with him. But they call it tunnel vision. It actually closes down like this. And then they see nothing else. Yes, they're aware that people care about them. They can call people for help, but they're like, no, it's mission time. It's go time. And I know they'll deal with it, but I can't take this anymore. And then they act on it. So, that's my, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I'm sorry to hear all your loss in your life, and it's probably made a huge impact on you as your own wellness. And as you mentioned, even thought about ending your life. What's changed in your life in the last 5-10 years where you feel like you passed some milestones in your life and your own wellness and your own mental health, that you're in a better space now? And what brought you to those better spaces if you did?
Well, I definitely reached a point where I said, I have to this is a battle I can't fight alone. So I got to get help. So one of the best things anybody can do is group support. So one of the first things I did is I took my sister and we went to a suicide support group, not for firefighters, just a suicide support group. And I can't say it's hard to explain the comfort of that, but you hear other people who are just as crazy and just as bad of a situation. Maybe not firefighters. First thing, get to a group support meeting. You'll meet other people further down the road than you. Like they lost their son a year ago. They lost their wife a month ago. And then you ask them, how did you get, horrible. I don't know how I did it. One day at a time. Just get to a group support. That's one of the first things. Get to a group support. And that helped me, man. For survivors
and partners or relatives or anything like that. Yeah. Gotcha.
Well, first I went to suicide support. And by reading, and I was engrossed in the reading of trying to understand it, the why, how could he? My first reaction to that was, how could he do that to me and to us? How could he? And he didn't do it to us. He just, a temporary, what do they call it? A permanent solution to a temporary problem. Whatever things could have been worked out probably would have, but what's the rush to end your life? It's going to end sooner or later anyway. And I did have that discussion with him in the months prior. I didn't think that was on his plate, but I just, so yeah, get to a group support meeting as soon as you can. Don't think this is something that you can go through alone. And it's no disrespect to be with other people that have gone through it. And eventually you become somebody that helps other people. And then I was reading on one of the support websites. I ran across Jeff Dill from WWFBHA.org, who has specifically first responder suicides. And he's a retired captain from Palatine, Chicago, right outside Chicago. Right outside Illinois, outside Chicago. And it's strictly first responders. And that man is a lifesaver. He couldn't have been kinder. He couldn't have been more understanding. I've done a few events with him, actually. He invited me up to Chicago to work with him one night, which I did. But it was a really terrible, terrible, tough time. It took me a long, long time you'll never get over it. What it is your leg is blown off. Initially, you have to stop the bleeding so you don't bleed to death. Then they stitch you up, and then you have to learn to live without your leg. And you're never going to have your leg back. So you have to learn to live with it. And I'm a big proponent of the positive thinking of, it's really hard when you lose somebody, even 9/11, like every cloud has a silver lining. And I remember saying that at 9/11, please tell me the silver lining to this. 3,000 people killed, the two of the most beautiful buildings leveled to the ground over some political statement. And how do you find a silver lining to this? It takes a little bit of time. And sometimes you're able to fight it. Listen, firemen are warriors, policemen are warriors, but sometimes you can't fight. Sometimes you actually have to just sit down, and I call it gut it out. Not for a week, not for a month, not for a day, maybe for a day or a night. You just got to curl up in the fetal position. It sounds terrible. You got to curl up, whatever position you get in, but basically got to curl up and it'll pass.
I'll let it out.
Don't fight the grief. Matter of fact, one expression my friend always repeats to me that I had heard, because any fireman will tell, no, I'm okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I saw this lady get killed. Yeah, somebody told me, I'm all right. I'm all right. That's always the answer that you get, and then they go home and they struggle with it, instead of sharing it. I'm okay until you're not okay. And then when you're not okay, sometimes you're acting foolishly on it. So sometimes you actually can call their friend, say, listen, I'm just going to gut it out. You need me to come? No, I'm going to just gut it out. So you can't have the bravado and say, I'm not going to, no, it's not going to bother me. When it comes, that's the way the expression that I heard. So when grief shows up at your door, you can't shut the door and say, I'm not expecting it. No, because it's still in there. You have to open the door. You have to put a seat next to you and say, come here, grief, sit down next to me. And let's get comfortable. Give me what you got, and then go away. And that's where gutting it out takes it. You curl up in a ball, cry your eyes out, and then reach out for some kind of help.
Well, the worst thing to do is bottle it up and not talk to anyone, or even talk to yourself about the whole thing, right? So get the right thing there for sure.
Yeah, and the three things I think of, and I'm not going to use the word because it's but hardest thing for a warrior type, fireman type, civil service type is to say these three things. Basically, it's, I've effed up. Can you help me? That's not something, first of all, no fireman's ever going to admit I'm emotionally effed up. They're not going to say it. So they don't say it. Now they got to pile inside. And it certainly is going to say, that's it. I'm effed up. I need help. Will you help me? Those three things. That's really hard for a warrior to say. Navy SEAL, military, fire, police. I'm effed up. I need help. Will you help me? Because most of the time it's a can-do attitude with anything. I don't need you to, I could take a door, and they'll die before they hit the Halligan 400 times. Their shoulders are blown off. They're still going to not say. So for a guy in the emotional department to say, I'm effed up. I need help. Will you help me? It's really hard. Because they think, what are you going to do? All right, I'm upset because of my divorce, my work problems, my financial problems. You're not going to do anything for me. I'll figure it out. Can-do attitude. I'll figure it out until you can't figure it out, and then you're gone. And figuring it out sometimes, Chief, is I could take my life. That'll solve everything. And now I'm just way back there as an option, but they move it up. And that's what I've seen. Not big on the self-promotion stuff, but I did actually just start a firehouse cooking show.
Oh, yeah.
On YouTube. Yeah, it's called American Firehouse Cuisine. Not far from my house. I built the whole studio.
So nice.
It's got it's got a brass fire pole. It looks like an old New York City firehouse. Nice. It's in an old warehouse here. I swear to God, if you walked in, you'd think it was 1985 in New York City firehouse.
Love it.
Yeah, and it has the pole and a cooking station. Slide down the pole, talk, cook recipes, can have guests on. So, and that's at, you can go to AmericanFirehouseCuisine.com and go on the TV show, and you'll see, I did 3 episodes already. I've been a little lax about doing the other episodes because I'm not a TV celebrity, but I'm trying to learn it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll definitely have that in the show notes for everyone to check out for sure.
Yeah.
So, Joseph, as we close, what would be one nugget you just would like? If I didn't say this to the audience today, I would feel not fulfilled in this podcast episode. What would be that one nugget you want to leave with the listener right now? On anything, on health and wellness, on PTSD, on survivor, on grief, whatever you think's on your mind right now. What's the one thing you want to share?
Well, the one thing I say again, I like the word embrace, because that's basically like a hug. So embrace your job wherever you work. Embrace the people that you work with. Have fun. Keep it good natured. If life throws a lot of stuff at you, relationship, divorce, finance, politics, you name it, share it with the other people. And if you are internalizing it, realize that you're filling this thing up that might have a terrible ending. And share that with, listen, not everybody that you work with is going to be this sensitive person but there are some. Seek out that guy that you could talk to. Senior guy, new guy, everybody has something to give to you. So embrace that. And then the other thing I said, take a lot of pictures of guys that you work with. And it may be the inspiration that you need. Let's say you're really in the pits and you had terrible things happen and you did have this great conversation with some guy that you just had an affinity for. He's just a great guy, great fireman, easy to talk to, good sense. Maybe in your retirement, you pull out his picture and you're like, wow, that guy doesn't know it, but he saved my life by talking to me that day. He doesn't know it. And then pick up the phone or call him or text him. Say, and I've done that, I mean, I wrote to my lieutenant in Engine 319. I haven't talked to the guy since I left the firehouse in 1984. And I wrote him a beautiful note, sent him a copy of the book. He didn't know anything about the book or anything. And then he called me. He said, Joe, I can't thank you enough. My wife is so excited. That was such a nice thing that you wrote for me. I want to tell you what a great officer you were. I learned so much from you. And I'm so thrilled that you're still alive. And God bless you, your family. So
yes,
whether you're still in the fire service, out of the fire service, pick up the phone, call up an old fire, make him feel like $1 million.
Love it.
And you might save his life. He might be in the height of a depression and thrilled to hear from you.
You just said that the other day on World Mental Health Day was pick up the phone, call somebody you haven't called in a while, send an email, send a text, stop by for a cup of coffee, whatever that is. But just pick up, our lives get so busy
Yep.
Just connect with somebody. Connect with somebody you haven't reached out in a long time. And that was a
Yep.
message I just did a couple days ago. So,
Oh, excellent.
well, Joseph, how can people learn more about you? Maybe look at you for speaking opportunities or your book, or how can they connect with you?
You can email me at support@AmericanFirehouseCuisine.com. You can go to the website, AmericanFirehouseCuisine.com. It'll have the 9/11 story on there. It'll have the actual video of the morning of 9/11 before it even happened. And then the host having me back. It has my brother Michael's story of working down at Ground Zero. Has 3 new episodes of the cooking show. Has some older episodes of the cooking show. Some of my appearances on Regis, Good Morning America, Today Show, stuff like that. That'll all be on there. And listen, I put it out there to anybody in the fire. Email me. You're struggling. You want to talk fitness, nutrition, struggling, anything like that. Again, with any chiefs that are listening or people that make those decisions, if you need me in there to do a PTSD, I'd love to do that. Save some firefighters' lives, do a PTSD seminar. But my bigger areas of expertise is exercise and nutrition and post-fire recovery. So so any chiefs out there that are listening to this podcast that are interested in having me out there, I'd just give back to the fire service and we'll have some fun. And I've even done live cooking demonstrations at it if they want.
Oh, nice.
So
can you still
You know
get
what?
your book? Is it still being published? Your book, your original one, the
you
first
can
one?
Amazon.com.
Yep.
If you want to get it from me directly, just go to the website, order from me directly, and email me. I'll call you personally if you want, sign it, whatever you like.
Well, Joseph, it's been an honor to connect with you, and thanks for being so vulnerable and open with us and sharing some pretty rough times in your life. And nice to see you that you got some tools in place for your own self to live the rest of your life in the best possible condition, right? So
Yeah, and thank you too, Chief, for the work that you do too.
thank you. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this great episode and some inspiration to get into the kitchen and to cook, and also maybe some inspiration to reach out to somebody that you love, that you haven't talked to in a long time, you care about, maybe a mentor, whatever that looks like. Just reach out to them and connect with them. So until next time, stay well. All right, that's a wrap.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.